Welcome, congratulations. It's a beautiful San Francisco morning, and I am Don Blue. Thank you very much for joining us today to mark the centennial of a San Francisco institution, your Muni system. Yeah. Now, it's actually quite apropos that I'm here today because we're talking about Muni, of course, moving people from one place to another. And I just moved from 1013 to 1037. So thank you very much. That's our problem. That's my listener right there. I'm trying to move about 1 million people up the dial, so I've come here to learn from Muni about doing just that sort of thing. Today I want to extend a very special welcome to the members of the Muni Centennial Honorary Committee that Senator Dianne Feinstein has graciously agreed to chair. I will be introducing and recognizing the members of the committee shortly, along with the lady with two hats right over here. Right, nice to have you here. Absolutely. Always a part of the day. We also have some very special guests and extend them greetings from District 4 Supervisor Carmen Chu, District 8 Supervisor Scott Weiner, District 10 Supervisor Malia Cohen, District 11 Supervisor John Avalos, and City Treasurer Jose Cisneros. Front and center, well done. So, very happy 100th to Muni since its first days of operation on December 28, 1912. This unique public transportation system has attracted and intrigued and amazed and served people from this great city and untold millions of visitors from all around the world. It was the first major publicly owned transit system in the nation, and today is the 7th largest, carrying more than 200 million people a year. Muni was part of the rebuilding after the 1906 earthquake and served as a dynamic catalyst as the city expanded over the sand dunes and down the peninsula. Songs and movies often have featured Muni. I don't know if you heard this one. To beware little cable car. Actually, Tony Bennett just in town a couple weeks ago for the 50th anniversary of that song. He did a wonderful job of it. In short, Muni is the people's system. As it marks its first 100 years of service, it is also a system that is confidently positioned to realize its vision as set forth in the SFMTA's new strategic plan, which is San Francisco, great city, excellent transportation choices. And who better to wave that flag than our new mayor? Although he's only been the chief executive for a brief time, he too has a vision, and that is to make San Francisco the innovative capital of the world. He's a leader who served 2 terms as city administrator. He advanced the city's move to a cleaner environment, most notably by leading the way for green electric vehicles. And just this Tuesday, his new Office of Innovation launched Improve SF, which is a website providing a dynamic platform for rethinking the role that government and citizens will play. Mayor Lee embraces technology, although like a lot of us, he was a little slow to grab on sometimes. Initially, as a city administrator, late in the day one day, he's standing in front of the shredder. He's holding a document. He's frustrated. He says, "Can somebody help me with this thing, please?" An assistant comes over, pushes the button, takes the document, sticks it in. And Ed said, "Thank you so much. Now, can you make me 2 copies of that?" Ladies and gentlemen, the 43rd mayor of San Francisco, Ed Lee.
Thank you, Don. Actually, I asked for 3 copies. Welcome, everyone, to the beginning of the celebration of 100 years, the centennial of our municipal transit system. I am so proud of this system. This 5,000 dedicated people serving all of our citizens and visitors, and it's a great reason to celebrate. I want to thank former Mayor Willie Brown for being here as well, my past mentor. Thank you for being here. Our Chief Protocol Officer, Charlotte Schultz, thank you for being here as well. someone I learned a lot as city administrator, and our past city administrator as well, Rudy Nothenberg. Thank you for being here too. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so thrilled to share this stage with so many of our elected officials, with our MTA board, our supervisors, but certainly foremost in my mind has been our wonderful Senator Dianne Feinstein, who really had a compassion for this system. But before I introduce her, I just wanted to just let you know again how valuable this system is to us and what it means to us today. But in recognition of that, before we do there, it still is. I mean, we've got 63 bus routes that are managed by our MTA, 7 light rail lines, the historic F-line streetcars, of course, 3 separate cable car lines, 700,000 daily boarders of our MTA. 80% of them are San Francisco residents that board our Muni system. So, of course, Senator, as you so well articulated just moments ago, no mayor can ever escape a comment on a daily basis about somebody's quality of ride in this city. Not me, not even her, not Willie Brown for 100 days, not anybody else can ever escape because it's so much a part of our daily lives. But it's also a reflection of early generations of innovation, because we go back many, many years ago when that system was created. And you know, you can't avoid acknowledgement of history when people like Andrew Holliday, who was in the mining world, had used the mining technology to then create the first cable cars in our system. And now today, they become the iconic representation of our Muni system. That was innovation 100 years ago. And then to understand that Mayor Ralph in 1912 drove this very streetcar that we're about to ride in 1912, down Geary Street to yet again represent innovation. And just later on, we're going to have not only our ride with Senator Feinstein and myself and so many of you, but we're going to also have on board the newest generation of innovators, some of the technology companies that are here today that are locating themselves on our Market Street will be riding with us as well, because they represent, I think, the newest generation of technology that's going to help Muni come into the new generations of riderships for many years to come. This is 100 years. As of December 28th of this year, we're going to be celebrating that 100 years. But we're going to have a lot of events leading up to that time. And also to thank the 5,000 dedicated people who are here today. And I need to thank the Transport Workers Union because they're giving me a driver's pass today. Mr. Williams, thank you for TWU, because a brief driver's pass to drive down his historic car is absolutely necessary. One that will represent that I'll be as safe as I can be, but also as enthusiastic about the system as you and the workers and the men and women who are represented here are always going to be on a daily basis as we transport these 700,000 riders on a daily basis. You know, one of the nice things about sharing the stage with Senator Feinstein is we can look back at her enthusiasm when she was a supervisor back in those years in the 1970s, when she declared this city to be transit first city. That was a wonderful thing, because that has guided us for so many generations. It has guided me to today, that we are still a transit first system. And this is why we invest in our transit system. This is why we want to make sure it's not only serving all of us, but that it welcomes in the new routes that we're creating. The T 3rd Street line that Mayor Brown had worked so hard to get established. And now with Senator Feinstein's help and help of so many of our federal delegation and our state representatives, we're going to finish, start and finish that Central Subway that will also be the complement of the 3rd Street Light Rail. That'll be another addition that we look forward to our transit system representing. to connect up eventually to what we've already started at the Trans Bay Terminal, so that Caltrans and BART and all of our Muni transit system can connect up to the wonderful world of high-speed rail that will be in our lifetimes. Not just a wish. We are taking steps to make sure that's a reality, because that's our future. We cannot risk the inability to have our transit system connected up to all of the areas. And then, to help Muni establish the bus rapid transit systems along Geary, along Van Ness, that's going to be done in a very short time. And we've got some help, because today we announced the rebuild of our hospitals, and they're contributing to the rapid transit systems along Van Ness and Geary, as well as rebuilding our 2 hospitals. So Senator Feinstein, with your leadership for so many years and your help and such a wonderful leadership, I also want to acknowledge this transit system runs on hydroelectric power from our Hetch Hetchy Dam. And we know that. We've felt that. We've used that. In addition to the wonderful water system that it has, our O'Shaughnessy Dam generates this power for our transit system and for most of our public buildings. And for anybody to suggest that we should tear down that dam and be irresponsible to generations of people who are dependent upon this innovation that occurred hundreds of years ago is to be irresponsible to our whole city. So I will tell you today, we will protect that dam, we will protect that innovation, and we will do it in the spirit that all of our innovators are today, that our city is rich enough to help everybody, to make sure that we reflect everybody's lives. This transit system touches all of people's lives, whether you're a struggling immigrant, a small business, or a burgeoning business, or the largest business in San Francisco. It touches everybody's lives. And she knew it when she was supervisor, when she declared transit first. She continues to help us so many ways in advocacy in Washington, D.C. She's been my mentor extraordinaire, and she's been continuing to be a great representative of our city. If I may welcome to the podium our U.S. Senator, Senator Feinstein.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's always nice to come home and get one good round of applause, kind of my morale boost for the week. This is a trip down memory lane for me. As a 6-year-old, I used to ride the F streetcar from where we lived in the marina on Fillmore around Beach Street in a flat down to 450 Sutter. I couldn't read, and so I'd have to ask the operator to please tell me when this street came up, and of course he did, and I'm still here. And it really developed a tremendous fondness in me for these mechanical giants. And then, as Willie will know, and Rudy will know, Rudy was deputy mayor for Willie, deputy mayor for me. We're joined by a distinguished public utilities commissioner that I had the privilege of nominating and putting on the commission, Dr. Welton Flynn. If you give him a big round of applause, please. As Rudy knows well, the problems are 2. It's either how do you fix it when something goes wrong, or how do you fund it, because public transit systems are expensive. When I became mayor, one of the first things we found was that there wasn't a staggered bus buy. Do you remember that, Rudy? And so 1/2 of the fleet, which was around 300 cars, was breaking down continually. Now, that got my attention very quickly, and I think we did do the first staggering of purchases for the Muni Railway, so this would never, ever happen again. And thanks to the good stewardship of Mayor Brown and others, and the good stewardship of Ed Lee, it never is going to happen again. Then, in around 1983, into my office walked Gordon Swanson, then the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and Rick Lobsher. And Rick suggested to me doing an historic trolley festival. And that historic trolley festival was set to just operate during the tourist season from Fisherman's Wharf down to Castro, up Market Street to Castro, that's right, and just for 4 months. Well, the next year, 1984, was the Democratic Convention. So it was easy for me to convince him to continue that year. Then it was expanded to a 5-year plan, and it existed for 5 years. Well, it's been a few decades since then, and the historic Trolley Festival is still going on. And now I understand the route is going to be extended. But one of the great things about this city is that you have people who really do care. And they care not year in and year out, but decade after decade after decade. And Rick is one of those people. So you would do me a great honor if you would give him a big round of applause just by saying thank you very much. Now, I'll tell you a little story. We were standing in this little museum, which you all have to go in and see, and I said to Rick, wasn't this your idea? And he said, oh no, Mayor, it was your idea. Really, not so. And then another great event during my tenure was the cable car refurbishment. Cable cars are amazing. It's the last remaining cable system in the world. And the cable itself is very complicated because it is steel, but with hemp in the middle. And hemp, as you know, is of the marijuana family. And there aren't a lot of legal hemp producers in the world. Remember, Rudy? So we had to find hemp to redo the cable, which was done, and also restore those cable cars. And of great help during this time was my pal, Charlotte Schultz. And we went out and we asked the business community if they could raise $10 million, which was our match for the federal money of, I think, $42 million to restore it. And I'll never forget, in walked Ken Durr of Chevron. This was in those days with $1 million check. Not asked, just walked in, believe it or not. Those were really the good old days. And I said, okay, Ken, would you chair the effort? And he did, and that raised the $10 million. The federal grant was forthcoming, and the cable car system was restored. And today, it is the significant symbol of our city. Today, you have not only the millions of riders that were mentioned a year, but I guess you have at least 700,000 riders a day on this system. It is incredible, it is special, it needs care, concern, funding, fixing, and that's really what all of this is about. So for all of you that are here today to say we want to say happy birthday, but we also want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, I want to say thank you. What makes cities great are people who care. Never forget that. And so in this room, you have a heritage and you have a legacy. And that is, I think, the finest and most unusual public transportation system in the United States of America. Let's keep it going, strong, fixed, and funded for the next 100 years. Thank you for letting me be part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Feinstein, for being here. And now, if you and the mayor would come over, please, and we would like you to unveil the logo here. This is the Muni Centennial logo, which will brand our year-long celebration. Ready, and begin. Go. Nicely done. Good team. Good teamwork. By the way, let's recognize Chimmy Lee, the SFMTA's graphic designer, who created the logo. Which, of course, features the historic streetcar number 1. That was the first car to be operated when Muni was launched in December 28th of 1912. Just a couple blocks up Market Street. Recently restored, this 100-year-old transit workhorse sits right outside the tent here, and we will be taking rides on that later on. Soon to be as famous as Thomas the Train and the little train that could. So, streetcar number 1 will be ready for boarding later on. Our next speaker this morning is Supervisor David Chu, who was elected to represent District 3 in 2008, and 2 months later he was elected president of the Board of Supervisors. His district is, well, filled with the must-see places in San Francisco, North Beach and Fisherman's Wharf and Chinatown. He's an avid transportation supporter and also a member of the Muni Centennial Honorary Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, David Chu.
Good morning. What a beautiful symbol of our centennial, although after Senator Feinstein's story, I'm kind of hoping that there's a little marijuana leaf somewhere buried in that rail car. But I am honored to represent my colleagues here, and we have been very happy to be partners of moving this incredible transportation system into the 21st century. I know that most of my colleagues were actually recognized earlier, but I did want to take a moment to recognize one of our colleagues who has done so much to help reform Muni, Supervisor Sean Ellsburn. Thank you for being here. It's amazing that over a century ago, the cable car was invented, and there have been so many stories in the city of what Muni has meant to us. When I first came to the city 20 years ago, I obsessively rode the cable car, and it is what led me to start riding Muni. It frankly is why I don't have a car today, and I personally cannot imagine my life without Muni, although my staff told me I probably need more of a life. Now, whether you grew up here, whether you're a fifth-generation San Franciscan, or whether you are some of the hundreds of thousands of us that immigrated here from different parts of the world, we all have our Muni stories. Love it or hate it, Muni is San Francisco's favorite four-letter word. Over much of the past 100 years, though, we know that in California and in the United States, it has mostly been the century of the car. Our city has held on to our transit system unlike so many others. You only need to wake up every morning and get on the 30 Stockton, the 1 California, or the N Judah to understand how important this system is to all of us. But you also, when you wake up in the morning and ride those systems, you know that we face still many, many challenges. I have more confidence today in 2012, for the first time in a long time, that our MTA leadership is poised to improve our Muni Railway and make it worthy of our next century. And I want to, if we can, just take a moment to thank and applaud the men and women who every day are working to make the MTA better. But I will tell you, we all know, Ed Riskin, that you can't do it alone, and we all will have to make tough choices. We're all going to have to make real improvements that help to improve the public confidence in our Muni system. We know we're going to have to use technology and other things to make our riding experiences better. But I want you to know that from the Board of Supervisors, we will continue to make sure that our Muni system will remain, hopefully, one of the best, if not the best, transit system in the country, not just for the last 100 years, but for the next. Thank you very much.
Supervisor David Campos was elected to the District 9 seat of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in November of 2008. Supervisor Campos also has extensive experience in the transportation arena. He once drove to Los Angeles on Highway 1 in 4 hours and 26 minutes. He is the chairman of the Joint City and School District Select Committee, and he is here to tell you all about it this morning. Please welcome David Campos.
Thank you very much. It's great and it's truly an honor to be here. I'm here in my capacity not only as a supervisor, but also as the chair of the County Transportation Authority. And I want to acknowledge our vice chair, Supervisor Scott Wiener, who's in the audience. And we are the sister agency that works with the MTA, and our responsibilities are many, but it includes long-term transportation planning for the city and county of San Francisco, something that requires that the agency works very closely with the MTA. We're also the body that oversees the transportation sales tax for the city and county of San Francisco, and I'm very proud that we have a very strong working relationship with the MTA. And I especially want to acknowledge our new Director of Transportation, Ed Riskin, who I think in a very short period of time has hit the ground running and really brought in a different lens in terms of how to approach this job. The fact is that for so many of us, Muni is what makes it possible for us to live in this city. It allows us to get to and from work. It allows our kids to get to and from school. And even though there are some issues that people have with the system, I think that we should be very proud of this system. And one of the things that I want to thank Mayor Lee about is the fact that in the last few months, we have been focusing on the issue of how do we make Muni and public transit more accessible to families and children in San Francisco. We have a responsibility to make sure that not only we protect the infrastructure, the infrastructure of the system, but we also focus on creating the future generation of riders. And that is why I'm proud that even though we're still trying to work out the details, that the mayor and the board of supervisors, the MTA, and the regional bodies are working to make public transit accessible to children in San Francisco so that we have that future generation that will see Muni and public transit as part of their lives. So I want to thank you for that, Mayor Lee, and I want to thank the MTA Board of Directors also as they're looking at that issue. The last thing that I will say is that it's really important for us to make sure that we, as we move forward, we think of ways in which we can improve this agency, that we can make the agency even more accountable than it already is. But I think that in talking about accountability, it's important to make sure that we bring all parties to the table. And I especially would acknowledge the work of the workers that work at Muni, who make it possible for the system to run. The reality is, so let's give them a big round of applause. We may have differences of opinion on how we get there, but at the end of the day, the goal is the same. And I think that we in San Francisco, if we know anything, is we know how to get things done. So let's make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, a man who's dedicated his life to public service and is recognized as one of the region's foremost leaders in the transportation area. Tom Nolan has been a member of the SFMTA Board of Directors since 2006 and chairman since 2009. He's also the executive director of Project Open Hand that daily helps so many people in need. He recently had, he's up already. I was going to say he had a little hip knee surgery, so he's making his way here. Tom Nolan.
Thank you very much, Don. Senator Feinstein, Mayor Lee, Mayor Brown, President Chu, Supervisor Campos, members of the Board of Supervisors. It's an honor to be here on behalf of the MTA Board this morning. Every time I have a chance to speak about being on the MTA Board and be part of Muni, I begin by saying how proud I am of what we do. Every single day, we move 700,000 people throughout this city, and we do it very, very well. All kinds of different modes, we do it on behalf of the people. I'm delighted I'm joined this afternoon by our Vice Chair, Cheryl Brinkman, Leona Bridges on our Board of Directors, and Malcolm Heineke on our board as well. Thank you very much for being here. We're very fortunate to have the leadership of Ed Riskin, who's just done an outstanding job for the agency in these last 7 or 8 months, and we look forward to his continued leadership. I want to also take a moment to acknowledge two of my predecessors as chairman of this, Welton Flynn, assuredly the gold standard of public service in San Francisco. Mr. Flynn, thank you so much for all you have done. And my immediate predecessor, Dr. James McCrae, who led us with a great deal of compassion and dignity through some extremely difficult times over the past several years. Thank you, Dr. McCrae, for being with us. Over the course of the last 100 years, Muni's diverse workforce, forged by women and men of innovation and dedication, has reflected the melting pot of cultures that make up our very vibrant city. Throughout this centennial year, we are taking moments like this to look back at that first 100 years of our transit system that is like none other in the world, to celebrate where we've been and to plan for where we are going in the future. Muni's contributions to San Francisco are legion, and we will continue to do that in very challenging times. Tomorrow, Muni and the entire SFMTA returns to the task of increasing mobility options for all San Franciscans and all visitors, minimizing our dependency on fossil fuel, aggressively developing and implementing healthier, greener modes such as biking, walking, car sharing, all of that to minimize our carbon footprint. The intrepid spirit of the people of San Francisco epitomizes the city's municipal railroad, its work through all of these years. And while our challenges are great and daunting, our determination is even greater as we begin our second 100 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. So who is this Ed Riskin everybody's talking about anyway? Since assuming the helm at the SFMTA last August, Ed Riskin has provided a brand of leadership that will take the SFMTA well into the coming 100 years. He will be launching the agency's new 6-year strategic plan this July 1st. Remember that one we talked about. San Francisco, great city, excellent transportation choices. Please welcome Ed Riskin.
Thank you very much, Madam Senator, Mr. Mayor, distinguished guests. It's such a thrill to see all of you here, to be here in this day, and it's such a thrill to have this job, to be able to serve as your Director of Transportation. I think I've got the best job in the city, and I really see it as a privilege and an honor. And I, in turn, want to honor those who came before me, some of whom are here today, both the leadership of the agency, the commissioners, the directors, but even more so, the women and men who for 100 years have been working hard to make Muni work, the operators, the mechanics, the accountants, the analysts, the engineers, and our great partners in labor who represent them, without whom we wouldn't have the system we have. There's millions of hours of effort and love and expertise have been poured into the transportation system in San Francisco over the last 100 years, and that's something that San Francisco should be very proud of. And as we look forward to the next 100 years, we have a lot to be excited about. This is a great time for transportation in San Francisco. We've got great things on the horizon. We're in the midst of approving 2-year operating and capital budgets that represent significant investments into our transit system and into our transportation systems. We're improving Muni through the Transit Effectiveness Project. We're making Muni function better, more efficiently, more effectively. We're investing in facilities and infrastructure to make cycling and walking a better experience in San Francisco. We're improving taxi service. So we see great things ahead as we move into the next century of service for Muni and the MTA, and helping to make moving around San Francisco better, easier, safer, and more enjoyable for people who need to get around in this great city of ours. So it's an honor for me to serve in this position, to serve the people of San Francisco and the people of the Bay Area. And I want to thank the great leadership represented by those behind me and the men and women of the MTA for making any success we have possible. So before I relinquish the mic to the last speaker, I'm going to ask our operations folks to start moving car number 1. They're going to turn it around so that we can take a ride on it, piloted by our great current and former mayors, and then we're going to put it back in service for the people of San Francisco for whom it was meant to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Well, we called Tom Nolan Mr. Transit, so that means that Rick Lobsher is going to be Mr. Streetcar. Nobody has worked harder to bring the historic streetcars back to San Francisco. From the Trolley Festival of 1983, that was championed by Senator Feinstein, to the F-line of today, Rick has been on that mission, and that mission is right outside of this tent, turning around, as I hear. Today, the F-line is America's most popular streetcar line, And by the way, Rick is the only guy in the Bay Area, I think, to actually pay the proper fare when he gets on and off the streetcar. I know you other people haven't done it regularly. So please welcome Rick Lobsher.
Thank you, Don. I just wanted you to know there is a future after radio. That was a long time ago, I can tell you. Senator Feinstein, Mayor Lee, Mayor Brown, honorable supervisors, other elected officials, and honored guests. And a special shout out to Welton Flynn, one of the great San Franciscans of all time. I'm so glad you could come today, Welton. Muni is today what Muni is because of people like Welton Flynn, who devoted his whole life to it. Representing Market Street Railway's membership, I'm joined by several directors, including our Vice President, Doug Wright, who leads a lot of our efforts. Doug is the man who, when he was Deputy Mayor and Planning Commissioner, had a lot to do with the Embarcadero you see today. And, you know, like a lot of people, Doug has given so much of his time to San Francisco to making it a better place. We all join today in celebrating America's first big city, publicly owned transportation system owned by the people themselves. Still today, it is a landmark of the progressivism that has marked our city for a century. The historic streetcar we rededicate today is a fitting symbol of that progressivism, that history. It carried generations of San Franciscans around the city to shop, to work, to learn, to play. It almost certainly carried my grandparents when they lived on Utah Street, a block from Muni's H line, and is America's very first publicly owned big city streetcar. It almost certainly qualifies to be sitting on display at the Smithsonian. But we in San Francisco had a better place for it than that, because here we put our history to work. We embrace our past, but we give it a job to do to benefit our present and help enrich our future. And we're sitting right next to the Ferry Building, which is just one of many symbols in San Francisco of how we've done that. We invite the world to use our attractive vintage streetcars as part of our regular transit service to get to places they want to go to and to have fun in the process. These museums in motion have proven their value. As Don says, today the F line is America's most popular traditional streetcar line and attracts as many riders every day as all three of our priceless cable car lines combined. Senator Feinstein gave me way too much credit for a role in this. This would not have happened without the mayors who have been involved in this through the years, starting with then Mayor Feinstein. When I was in her office, I will never forget, she looked, listened, and said, "All right, I'll do it, but I don't want to see any junk out there." Senator, we have watched the streetcars go by, including this one right outside our window. I think we did a pretty good job of keeping it classy. So after the mayor set a very high standard for this service, Muni has constantly delivered on it, starting with Rudy Nothenberg. When he ran the Public Utilities Commission, he has ensured that it rose to a level that is worthy of San Francisco. His successors, both in the governing body and in management, like Ed today, and his predecessors have kept that going. It is their work, not the work of the volunteers like myself, who are responsible for this system being what it is, and it's time to honor them for that. I want to particularly honor people who we don't see. We all see the operators, and many of them are wonderful with the riders. They are a model for Muni operators on every line. But I'd also like to honor the maintenance folks who haven't been mentioned here today. They are a group that do an exceptional job of keeping these cars running well. I want to particularly call out a man named Carl Johnson, who's been doing this for 30 years and now heads the maintenance. And his paint leader, Carol Gilbert, who is a true artist in streetcars. And these cars are as beautiful as they are because Carol and her team really care. They give their heart to this. Over the years, I've heard from transit agencies and advocates all over the world asking how we did this, and more importantly, how could they do it? There are always people who want to learn from us and emulate it. I always start by telling them, first you need a city government and a transit system like San Francisco's, where transit is not treated as the ride of last resort, where leaders understand that attractive transit drives investment along the route, drives incremental sales tax and property tax revenues, and adds to, rather than detracts from, the urban fabric and livability of our city. Other cities have followed our lead, and we can be proud of that. But let's remember that what we celebrate today is not only the past or even the present, but also the future. Muni Service built this city over the last century. The Sunset, Parkside, Richmond, and Marina districts grew up around core Muni lines. Today, the investment we've made in the T line is revitalizing neighborhoods from Viz Valley to Mission Bay, and soon we'll reach Chinatown as well. These historic streetcars on the F line, which have already helped transform the northern Embarcadero, enabling stellar attractions like the Exploratorium at Pier 15, are going to help Mayor Lee in his initiative to revitalize Mid-Market. These streetcars are a colorful and efficient connection between the Mid-Market neighborhood and vibrant communities elsewhere along the route. With some creative promotion, they can bring more people to Mid-Market, which I call the heart of Market, and help drive the arts and technology communities now getting established there. Mr. Mayor, our nonprofit pledges all our help to you in helping put the existing F-line service to work to help you meet your mid-market goals. We also look forward to the permanent implementation of additional streetcar service along the whole length of the Embarcadero, the E-line, that Mayor Brown foresaw as being a powerful tool to help develop the unmatched waterfront publicly owned assets of the port. Finally, we look forward to expanding on the original vision of Senator Feinstein from her days as mayor, leveraging all this investment we've already made in the track, the maintenance facilities, and the restored streetcars like the one we're going to ride, by extending streetcar service to reunite the two halves of Fisherman's Wharf, revitalize Aquatic Park, Ghirardelli Square, and Municipal Pier, and serve the Cultural Center at Fort Mason and the residents of the Northeastern Marina District, and enhancing the value of port and parkland along its route. This project has now cleared the environmental process and is ready to design and build. Bringing historic streetcar service to more of our publicly owned waterfront would be a fitting way to help launch the second century of America's first publicly owned transit system. It would be a capstone to a new landmark of our city that started 30 years ago with the vision of a mayor. To Senator Feinstein, her fellow mayors, and all the civic leaders here today who have made this historic streetcar service and Muni the valuable contributors to our economy that they are, thank you.
Thank you, Rick. So now, before we take a ride, at this time I'd like to recognize the other Muni Centennial Committee members and dignitaries. If you are here, please stand and give us a wave. And if you're not, you must be Senator Barbara Boxer, United States Senate.
Got to count, right?
You guys ready? Get the count.
Okay.
Count of three. One, two,
Three. There you go.
Here we go.
Welcome.
Oh, all right. Tom's gonna
Do we have to give up the scissors?
Okay.
Cutting on board.
No free scissors.
Willie, they'll take it away when you go through security here.